Welcome to Mac Stories Unwind, the show that's all about the picks. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. How's it going, Federico?
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's been quite a week, coming back from WWC, getting recovered, getting caught up, all that stuff. It's, it's funny. It's busy in a different way, but it's been busy good. I'm kind of caught up and feeling energized for getting the reviews started this year. I know you've been working on that a little bit.
Yeah, I've been slowly catching up on the sessions. I think I have about 14 sessions left to go, and then I'll be done with watching sessions. And, but I'm taking my notes. I'm organizing my chapters. We're starting this process all over again.
Yeah, all over again. Last night I actually rewatched the keynote because that screen that was done outdoors at Apple was really good, but it's a very different environment to watch a keynote in. So I actually wanted to kind of study it a little more closely. So I did that last night, which was just kind of a nice overview to get me ready to go for more sessions myself. Nice. That's enough. That's enough about Apple stuff, Federico. Let's dive into our picks. I know you've got an interesting one for me, and I'm curious about this particular pick.
Yeah. So I'm back to my video game picks. I think it's been a while. So I have this video game that I don't think you've heard of before. And the reason why I've started playing this game is because I finally had the time to go in and check all these indie games on Steam that I've been neglecting for the past few months. Just sort of taking a look at, games that I can play on my gaming PC, games that I can play on the Steam Deck. I have this list of these early access games and indie games, outside of the usual AAA games and Pokemon stuff. So the game that I've been playing, and I'm a few hours into this game, it's called Strange Horticulture by Iceberg Games. So Strange Horticulture, it's a very tricky game to describe. So it's described as an occult puzzle game in which you play as a herbalist. So the idea is that this is a point-and-click sort of text adventure game in which you play as the owner of a plant shop. Okay, so it's set in this quaint little town in a nondescript country. The town is called Undermere, I think. You inherit this plant shop called Strange Horticulture by your uncle who passed away. And very little is given to you in terms of the backstory. Simply that you are the new owner of this place that is sort of outside just outside of this small town. And the idea is that you start with zero information. Basically, you have some plants and flowers on your shelf. And this is a 2D point-and-click adventure game. Everything is set inside of the view of this plant shop. And all you can do is interact with the plants and the flowers. These are fictional plants and flowers, and each plant has a different property, a different name, obviously, and different qualities. And like shapes, some plants have flowers, some plants only have leaves, and all you can do is inspect the plants. You can water the plants to gain some points, and these points accumulate over the course of the day, and the points fill this bar, and this progress bar allows you to go out, open the map, and explore a location. When you explore a location, you're not really changing your setting. You're still inside the plant shop, but you have this view on the right side of the screen, just like a text adventure game. There's a background, and there's a text that tells you you're now sitting in front of a gate of this location outside of the town. How do you want to interact with this gate? And maybe, there's a plant that has the specific power of opening rusted gates, for example. And it's all fiction, right? It's all fictional. So obviously there are no plants that have the power to open a gate.
Open a gate, yeah.
But in the context of Strange Horticulture, they do. Some of them do. So what you do is effectively the game part of Strange Horticulture is that you solve the requests of the customers that come into your shop. You have a bell, you ring the bell, sort of like those bells that you have on the counter of a shop. You ring the bell and a customer comes in. And you see the animation, you see the 2D character walk in. And, characters, each of them has a name. And over time, you get to know all these characters, all these, the people who live in Undermere. And each of them has a request. Maybe there's the police detective who's investigating a murder. And this murder, it turns out that the victim was poisoned. And so you, as the plant expert, are tasked with identifying the plant that poisoned, the victim. And maybe there's, the guy who says, I have a stomach ache and I'm looking for something to cure my stomach ache. And there's another customer who says, I cannot sleep at night because I keep hearing these voices from the apartment, upstairs. So you have all these requests, and to fill these requests, to complete them, you gotta select a specific plant. The trick, however, is that, as I said before, no information is given to you about the plants and flowers. All you have is this book that your uncle left for you in the drawer underneath the counter of the shop. So most of the game is resolved by cross-referencing the information and the sketches. And these are rough sketches that you have in this book. The book has the sketches and the names and some of the details of the plants. But then you got to look at your plants and you got to say, okay, which one is one of them is called the Lady of Summer. Which one is the Lady of Summer? The book says it's got red flowers and thick leaves. And so you go to your shelf and you grab with your mouse the plant that you think may be the Lady of Summer, and you drag it onto the inspector panel, and you say, okay, no, this is orange, and the leaves are not thick, they're very frail, so this is not what the plant the customer is looking for. And it gets very addictive, because it's like this puzzle game where you're like, okay, I gotta cross-reference all these things. Let me find which one is the plant that the customer is looking for. And as you find the plant that is requested by the customer is happy and walks away, and you unlock maybe another plant. Maybe you unlock a new page of the book, and sometimes the mailman of the village comes in and says, hey, there's a letter for you. And the letter, this correspondence contains details from this other guy that I'm not sure who he's supposed to be. I'm sure it'll make sense in the story later on. But it's like, hey, I was exploring the hills just outside the forest located to the northeast of this location. And so you got to open the map and you got to say, okay, this location, where is it? And the map is very dense and filled with locations. And you're like, okay, so I got to go northeast, but he mentioned that is, 1 mile away from Lakeshore. So the puzzle game is also in the map, finding the locations in the map. What I really love about this game, besides the whole concept, like I've never played a game about being a herbalist, cross-referencing fictional plants and flowers and mushrooms. There's also mushrooms.
This sounds a lot like your kind of game, because it feels like it's a puzzle game, but it's a research game in a way too, right?
Yes, it's a fictional research game. Yeah. And the reason why I love it is that the very UI of the game is basically a drag and drop multitasking UI. Because you can open multiple windows at the same time. You can have the book open on one side, and then you can place something on your desk, and then you can open the map, or maybe you can open a letter on the side, and you check the map, and you're like, okay, so the letter says I gotta find this forest, and so your eyes go from the letter to the map, and you can, as you do, you can open these multiple pop-up windows, and everything is point and click based. So you have this very intuitive UI. You can zoom in on text if it's too small. And yeah, I guess it appeals to me because it's very text based and also like it's about research and multitasking inside your shop. And honestly, like I'm about 2 hours into the game. I think it's a very short game. It's about 5 hours, I think. It's a classic indie game, small, contained, unique experience. And honestly, like this is one of the most unique games I've played in a long time. And it's not really challenging in the sense Elden Ring challenging. It's not about action. It's not about pressing buttons. It's about reading and retaining information and checking these clues that you have. So I've been playing on my gaming PC. It's excellent with a mouse, with a cursor, obviously, but it's also playable on the Steam Deck. It's officially compatible with the Steam Deck, and you can use the trackpad. This is why I love the Steam Deck, because you have all these input options. Trackpads, You can use the trackpad. It's not it's not as comfortable as playing on a gaming PC with a proper mouse, but it's doable. So I've actually started playing the game for like an hour on the Steam Deck, and then I switched over to the gaming PC. And because I've been playing on Steam, my cloud saves are synced between devices, so I can just pick it up and go on another machine that's running Steam. So Strange Horticulture. You can find it on Steam. Very particular game. Yeah. But I really love it. I'm curious whether that would work on the Ioneo.
because it does have some trouble with mouse-based games sometimes. I mean, you have to kind of fiddle with it a little bit. But yeah, that sounds really interesting. I like the idea of this. I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not an action type of game, but it's a nice distraction, I bet. Puzzle. I always love puzzle games like that.
Yeah. And speaking of the ANEO, just a quick update, sort of as a follow-up pick. But something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I had this realization about the ANEO over the past few days, and specifically about the ANEO and the Steam Deck. I have now accepted the fact that the Steam Deck is an excellent machine for Steam games. I've been trying so hard to turn the Steam Deck, and a bunch of people have, and a bunch of people are doing this, but turning into the Steam Deck into this all-in-one experience that combines the gaming OS, the touch-friendly UI of the Steam Deck with the Linux-based environment that lets you install emulators and lets you, install all kinds of emulators, and through various hacks in the terminal, make those emulators also available in gaming mode. So the more user-friendly UI. But I really didn't like doing that. And so what I've realized over the past week, really, is that the Steam Deck is going to be my Steam machine. I'm just going to use my Steam Deck for what it's supposed to be. Games from Steam that are optimized for the Steam Deck. And so I picked up the ANEO again. I've done a round of updates. I've deleted all the other games that I'm going to play on the Steam Deck now. But I've turned the ANEO into what it really excels at being, which is an emulation machine. So my realization has been the Steam Deck and the ANEO, they fill two different purposes in my life. The Steam Deck is a Steam Deck, and it runs Steam games that have been optimized for it. But on the ANEO, because it runs Windows, and it's so much more intuitive, at least for me, to mess around with configuration files and the file explorer, all these things, and it runs Dropbox. On the ANEO, I've been putting all these emulators. And so I went in 2 days ago and yesterday, and I've reorganized all my emulators. And I want to give a quick shout out to one specifically. I'm going to tweet about this later, maybe. PPS SPP. Funny name, but this is the PSP emulator that you can find on Windows, you can find on Android, and you can find on iOS if you use AltStore. This is an excellent PSP emulator. And what I love about this is that the configuration of it and sort of the settings are very reminiscent of Dolphin. Just like Dolphin, PPS SPP lets you upscale games, lets you upscale your PSP games at a higher resolution. But in addition to that, just like Dolphin, you can go on Google and you can search for fan-made HD textures for old PSP games. So what I've been playing also for like an hour is Crisis Core. This is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. This is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, the original one. Crisis Core is an action game. You play as Zack, an old colleague of Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, and it's an action RPG game. I've been playing Crisis Core on my ANEO, upscaled to twice the resolution, so it looks great on the ANEO screen, with HD textures. There's a project on GitHub. It's open source. You can go in and download these 4 gigabytes of machine learning optimized HD textures. It's called FF7 Crisis Core Upscale Project, or FF7 CCUP on GitHub. And it looks amazing. I'm gonna the person who made it actually upscaled not just the textures of the game, but also the UI. So the text is super sharp.
Oh, nice.
Something like the posters and like the signs on the wall. The text is super crisp. It looks fantastic on the ANEO. Well, all this to say, the Steam Deck is great for what it is, and now that I've realized this, I think I'm enjoying it a lot more. And the ANEO is gonna be my emulation machine and my Game Pass portable machine.
Yep. It's interesting you say that, because that's what I've been using mine for so far is Game Pass. And emulators are on my list of things to dive into next. So kind of neat to hear that, because I am still on the wait list for Steam Deck, but not likely to happen till towards the end of the year.
I can tell you, put Dolphin, PPS SPP for PSP, Dock Station for PlayStation 1. Dock Station also lets you upscale the resolution. It doesn't have support for textures yet because it's an ongoing project. Then you could use Cemu for the Wii U. You could use Citra for the Nintendo DS. You know, there's such a long list of amazing emulators for Windows, and the ANU is really perfect for those.
Perfect. Well, I'm definitely gonna dive into that. Federico, for my pick this week, I've got a movie for everybody. It's called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, I've been intrigued by this one. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was put out by A24, which is kind of known for its artsy and quirky films. It's directed by Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, who are collectively known as Daniels.
Right.
And this movie is a really interesting mix of genres. It's both funny, it's kind of a comedy, it's a family drama, and it's kind of an interesting blend between sci-fi and superheroes, in the sense that it's about a middle-aged Chinese immigrant in the United States who is running a laundromat with her husband and their daughter, and her father lives with them too. And her life is just overwhelming. She's running this laundromat. She's behind on her taxes. She can't seem to get the IRS off her back. And everything's just going wrong. And she's not been particularly successful in her life. And then one day she's at the IRS office with her family, trying to get her taxes straightened out, talking to the IRS person, who is played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And she has kind of this vision where her husband, who in the kind of the present day timeline is kind of a goofy, flaky guy, very funny and sweet type of personality, but also kind of a goofy person who puts like googly eyes on everything in the laundromat. You know, that's kind of his thing to do. Reminded me a little bit of Stephen and Mike with the podcast-a-thon, to be honest. But in any event, she has this kind of vision where she's visited by her husband from another universe. So it's a multiverse thing, very much like Marvel. And what's interesting is that this movie was co-produced by the Russo brothers, who have done a lot of those Marvel movies. So there's definitely an element of that there. And so she is told that she needs to help save the universe because there's an evil entity that is, plotting to take control of and swallow all the various parts of the multiverse. And she's the only one who can save it. And I don't want to give away too much, but what she does is this. First of all, this is the lead character is played by Michelle Yeoh, and it was originally written for Jackie Chan, which is kind of interesting. Like years ago, this movie's been kind of on the shelf for 5 or 6 years at least since the screenplay was written, and it has an element of martial arts in it too, where Michelle Yeoh, who plays Evelyn Wang, her mind is transported into these other versions of herself in other multiverses, where in those multiverses, instead of being a very ordinary person who runs a laundromat, she's a famous singer. In another one, she's a master of martial arts. And yet another one, she's got hot dogs for fingers, which is very odd. And in yet another, and another one, she's a chef, like a master chef. She takes on the abilities of these other versions of her to fight this evil being. And the movie is broken into 3 parts. It's broken up by the title. There's part 1 is everything. That's kind of the stage of the movie where you see how her life is overwhelming. She's having troubles with her husband, with her daughter, with her father. There's like family strife and the taxes and the business is not doing well and everything's going wrong. There's everywhere, where she is visited by her husband from the other multiverse and takes on these powers and starts battling evil. And then there's all at once, which is where it all kind of comes together at the end. And, you get all the loose ends that have been happening throughout the movie wrapped up all at once. And I'm not going to give away how that happens though. But this is a chaotic movie. I mean, there is so much going on. It's jumping back and forth between these different universes. It's both. I like the way it's done because the action and the way the story is told is chaotic, but it's also a reflection on this woman's life that is also chaotic and out of control. And so what it does is it kind of, by the two aspects reflecting each other, it gives you a real sense for the overwhelming nature of her life, because the movie itself feels a little overwhelming in the early stages, but then it all kind of comes together at the end. And I just really enjoyed this. I watched it during WWDC while I was out in California, kind of at the end of the week when everything was finished and I needed some downtime to just kind of focus on something else. And it was perfect for that because it was a nice, distracting film. It is currently available for $20 on iTunes. I think it's going to rental in a couple of weeks, though, at early July, if you prefer to do that. So that'll be available as well. And it's, the Rotten Tomatoes on this is 95%. So it's very well liked by audiences. I did see some mixed reviews from movie critics. The New York Times thought it was amazing, whereas The Guardian thought it was terrible, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Okay.
It was completely split. I mean, like, it was 5 stars in New York Times and 2 stars in The Guardian. And I didn't look too more deeply than that because I had already watched the movie just because I had heard good things about it online, so I figured I'd give it a go. And I really enjoyed it. So, and it seems like most audiences, despite the critics, like it as well. So I definitely recommend it.
All right. Then I got to pick this up, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. All right, Federico, that's it for this week. We will be back next Friday with another episode of Mac Stories Unwind. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he is at Viticci. That's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.